Hi friends, my name is Angie and in this video we're going to be tier ranking all of the movies that we saw this year. I mean only all of the 2025 releases because otherwise we would be here quite literally all day. It is a video that I'm always excited and equal parts nervous to make. Excited because I love talking about movies. I love reflecting on the movies that I saw this year, but also nervous because I always feel so underqualified to talk about movies. And yet, when has that ever stopped me before? So I'm gonna make myself really small and I'm gonna put myself in whatever corner makes the most sense. And we're just gonna get right into this. We're gonna talk about movies. Let's freaking go. Actually, before we even jump into the movies, I need to talk to you through the ranking system. S tier is best movie ever made, light of my life, apple of my eye, key to my heart. There's nothing wrong with this movie to me. A tier is almost there. It is a good movie. I enjoyed it enough. It is definitely a movie I would rewatch, but it didn't like completely rock my world. B tier stands for Oscar bait, which basically means good enough movie. I can see the art, I can appreciate the work that was put into it, but it just wasn't necessarily for me. I can see this movie winning a lot of awards, and that's great. C tier is frankly can't remember, can't be bothered. I fear that a lot of movies this year is gonna fall into this category because 2025 was kind of a floppy year for me, but we'll see what I can't remember and can't be bothered to remember or rewatch or think about. And then D tier, it just stands for doo-doo in my pants. It's a movie that I don't really care about. It's a movie that didn't work for me. It's a movie that just like did not. In every way it did not. That's what D stands for. So now, jumping into the movies, we have K-pop Demon Hunters, which is a movie that I enjoyed well enough when I first watched it. I thought it was cute, I thought it was sweet, I thought it was lovely, I thought the music was kind of fun. And I think when I first watched it, I gave it like maybe 3.5 stars. Like I enjoyed it enough. And then it took the world by storm and I got like absolutely sick of seeing it everywhere. I don't know what they put into this movie and I don't know what everyone else was picking up from this movie that I was not, frankly, but it went from like a well enough good fun movie to like I can't stand seeing this everywhere. Like I cannot. And so because I cannot, it's going into C tier. Also, sorry if my heater is being loud. What can you do? I could wait to film this video in spring, or I could just do it now and like deal. And our second movie is Wake Up Dead Man. This is going in S tier for me. I love the Knives Out series. I think it is so fun. This movie in particular not only stars Josh O'Connor as a hot priest, that's S tier material on its own, but also tackles religion in a really critical and yet respectful way. It did it in a way that was really satisfactory to me. And like mystery aside, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Father Judd is calling like the towing company and like he's trying to get information, he's trying to clear his name, and then suddenly the receptionist is like, hey, I'm going through this real rough patch, could you pray for me? And he completely drops everything so that he can talk her through this, so that they can have a prayer session together. And I just thought that was so lovely and so beautiful. And I also really love how like adjacent to that, so much of this movie is about leading with love rather than hate and being understanding and forgiving. And I think that was really lovely. And I think it's like something that we actually really need in society, in our art as of right now. Like I feel like we've been in such a dark and edgy path art-wise for a really long time, and it's been really nice to see kind of an end to that, kind of a caring is cool again kind of vibe. And so like this is slightly out of order, but similarly I'm gonna put Superman in S tier. S for Superman, you feel me? Well, okay, actually I lied. This is going in A tier, but for similar sentiments. So much of Superman is about how like being kind is cool, how we need to lead with kindness and we need to lead with vulnerability. And like there's a lot of stuff that felt like a little rushed maybe. I think that overlying message is great. I think the cast was perfect. And so actually we are gonna move it to S tier. I actually really liked Superman and it made me cry a little bit. Begonia, on the other hand, hand is gonna be an A tier. I really liked a lot of it, and yet I'm still having a little bit of mixed feelings about it. So if you're unfamiliar with Begonia, I actually recommend going into it not knowing anything about what the movie's about. That's how I entered the movie theater room, and it was just like absolutely mind-boggling. So I guess that's all I'll say about that, because I don't want to give anything away actually, but I just feel slightly conflicted about the last 30 minutes. It felt like what I wanted, but at the same time what I didn't want. And I don't really know how to articulate that any better than that. But what I will say about the things I did like about Begonia is that it was bizarre, surreal, funny, but also so overwhelmingly sad and distressing. And I think it was such a feat for the director and for Emma Stone and for Jesse Plemons to be able to balance that. Hamnet, on the other hand, and this might be controversial, did not work for me. And it's actually one of the biggest disappointments for me this year, because I really loved the book. And there was something about the movie that just like didn't carry that. It had all of the things it needed. It had Jessie Buckley, it had Paul Mescal, it had a great score, it had amazing costumes, it had the themes, it had the ideas, but it just like didn't make it to the finish line for me. And so like usually a movie like that would probably just be B tier for me, but like it was so immensely disappointing for me that it's just gonna fall completely to the bottom, to D. Because one of the things that really upset me about this movie is how stupid it thought I was. And I say that because it was like so heavy-handed and so like obvious about like William Shakespeare in a way that was just like completely the opposite of the book. Because in the book, like, yeah, it's William Shakespeare, but he's only ever referred to as the husband, the tutor, the playwright. And in here, like, William Shakespeare has a good day and he's like monologuing a thing from Romeo and Juliet, you know? He's contemplating suicide and he's like just burping out to be or not to be, like it just like came to him. Like in some ways you can argue like maybe William Shakespeare was that great of a writer that he could just like fart out a whole monologue when he's having a good day, but just felt like very like Shakespeare 101. Like it was just like a, hey, remember, this is the guy who did Romeo and Juliet. This has nothing to do with anything that's happening in the play, like, or rather the movie, but like just in case you forgot, this is Shakespeare. This is the guy. And I later found out that the director and I believe also the cinematographer like admitted to not really being well versed in Shakespearean works at all prior to making this movie. And I think that's fine. I think that's all well and good. And I'm not expecting everyone to be a Shakespeare expert, but it's like, why would you agree to a project that you like didn't have the background knowledge for? And or if you did accept the project anyways, why didn't you do some research? Why didn't you like look into it? The least you could have done was like a Google search. Knowing that after watching the movie did give me a sense of like, oh, like that's why it felt so disconnected from the original work. And like I know Maggie O'Farrell worked on the script as well, like she was like heavily involved in this movie, but like it just like didn't have the same touch, it didn't have the same feeling, it didn't have the same care that I think the book had. So all that to say is I'm keeping it in D tier. Dogman on the other hand is propaganda for sure, but the art style is really fun. I really like the animation. I did think it was a little silly. It's not necessarily something I would rewatch again on my own, but it is something that I very much enjoyed. So I think I'm gonna put it in C tiered for can't be bothered to rewatch, but I did enjoy it at the time. Wallace and Gromit is going in B tier. I think all stop motion should be celebrated. I thought it was funny. I thought it was clever. I thought it was silly and goofy and nostalgic and beautiful and amazing and fun. Is it something that I would rewatch a million times over? Not really. I don't really have like that strong of a nostalgia factor with Wallace and Gromit, but like who can say no to stop motion? I certainly can't. The Looney Tunes movie, however, is gonna go in D tier just because it was fine. It was perfectly like okay. Like I expected something a little bit different from like a Looney Tunes movie, and like the humor in this did feel like a touch like boomery in a lot of ways, and I hate to be like putting generations against each other, but I feel like this movie was doing that on its own. There was just like a lot of digs to millennials in a way that was like kind of weird and kind of like, I wonder what the perspective was supposed to be. I wonder who the audience was supposed to be. It just like didn't really land for me, which again, so disappointing because like I have Looney Tunes brain. I love the Looney Tunes, but like that's not my Looney Tunes. That's not my Daffy. The history of sound. Yeah, I didn't think it was Josh O'Connor's strongest work, and I also didn't think it was Paul Mescal's strongest work. History of Sound just like didn't really work for me. It's about these two men who like collect folklore, and it's about their relationship with one another. It's about music, it's about telling stories, and I felt like really disconnected from the story up until the last like 30 to 40 minutes when like everything came together and everything started like connecting and making sense. But I just like don't think there was a lot of chemistry between Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor in like a romantic way. I think that they could be buddies in a movie, but I wasn't buying this like romantic relationship between the two of them. The Longest Walk, or The Long Walk, was very fun for me. I think I would put it in B tier. It was one of the more surprising movies for me, especially because I'm not a huge Stephen King fan, but I do think that Stephen King is good at dystopians, and so like I did enjoy this one a lot. Did it have a little bit too much cussing in it? Perhaps, but it's also a Stephen King joint, so it makes sense. Yeah, I don't think I would really sit down to rewatch it unless I was like showing it to someone. Unless I was like, hey, have you ever seen this? This is kind of nuts, but it's not like on the top of my roster in any way, so that feels good. And it also feels good to put Mickey 17 in B tier, and I think that's mostly because it felt like there wasn't enough time in that movie to explore the story that it wanted to explore all of the nuances that it wanted to explore. And I remember thinking it was also like slightly heavy-handed, and I hate to live in a society where like directors don't trust their audience in that way. But also I can't really blame Bong Joon-ho because after he won all of those awards for Parasite, it was so obvious that no one who saw Parasite understood Parasite. And so I feel like if I was him, I would also feel slightly frustrated and make a movie that was like a little bit more on the nose, a little bit more like hand-holdy, because it's like you need to understand that capitalism is bad. And I don't know how else to do it except to make the antagonist in this movie be a reality star turned politician who has red hats. Like, what else can I do for you, audience? How else are you going to get this? So actually, I kind of respect him for thinking we're stupid, because at the end of the day, we are all a little bit stupid, and I'm gonna move it to A tier. Paddington in Peru is a B tier movie. It is perfectly fine. It is not my favorite Paddington. Paddington 2 holds that title. And actually, it's probably my least favorite Paddington. Just because I had like a lot of really high hopes about it. You know, like Paddington is in Peru. He's going back home. Like we're gonna see a lot about Peru in some way or another. And in fact, there was like 0 Peruvians in this movie except for like background characters who like didn't have any lines, and like the entire cast was white. And so like that was a choice. That was interesting. So it's definitely not a movie that I'm going to rewatch unless I had to, and actually I'm gonna move it to C tier. Like now that I'm saying all of that out loud, like nothing about the movie was particularly memorable, and also they changed the mom, and like I didn't like that either because I thought the original mom was great. I'm sure it was like a scheduling conflict thing, but I was just like, who's this woman? That's not my mom. So there's a lot of minor details that I didn't love about Paddington. What I did love about this Paddington was its like conversation about the feeling of diaspora. He doesn't feel fully Peruvian anymore, but he also isn't like fully British either. And so like that was an ongoing conflict that Paddington was going through. Would it have been better if it was like a little bit more at the forefront? Maybe, but also it's a children's movie, so like what can you do? Avatar is going in A tier. I have a lot of complicated feelings about Avatar and its franchise because is it amazing to look at? Yes. Are all of the technical behind the scenes things incredible? Yes. Are all of these actors so incredibly talented to be like acting with their full like bussy to a wall? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's like a white guy's fantasy about colonization, and that feels like kind of corny to me. The fact that the white guy ex-Marine is like the chosen one sucks. The fact that they're like all preying on like indigenous women, like granted in this movie, in this universe, they're aliens, but like they're still like, you know, like we're just like playing this story again over and over again. Corny. But the fact that Kate Winslet is acting her butt off as an alien to like a foam ball, and then like when you're watching the movie, like you're seeing all of this emotion and all of this acting, and it's like, whoa, this is incredible. Like she's literally talking to a wall and she's doing that. Incredible, amazing. Especially when you compare it to like other movies that like rely heavily on CGI and you can literally see the disconnect from the actors. Like Avatar like is really doing it. These actors are really doing it. So on a technical, visual, behind the scenes kind of thing, like this is truly like a masterpiece. Like this is truly a body of work. And even on like the lore level, like James Cameron has put so much work into creating this world, and like that is so impressive. And like when you see him talk about Avatar and Pandora and the Na'vi, like you can see like how much this means to him. And also it's a white guy's fantasy about colonization. Like it's not like groundbreaking. He's like, wouldn't it be crazy if white people were racist? And then like 80% of the world is like, no kidding. Like you're telling me. So, you know, we're gonna keep it in A tier. Eddington, we're gonna put in C tier. When I first saw Eddington, I very much disliked it. And I think the reason why was because of the audience that I was watching it with. For context, I live in the state of New York. It is historically a blue state. There are a lot of people who have like a holier than thou attitude when discussing the South. And so when I was in the theater room watching this, like the air in that theater was very smug. It was very like pipiri nice in a lot of ways. And it just like felt yucky being in that room watching this movie with people who felt so much better than the people who were being depicted in this movie. So again, when I first watched the movie, I gave it like maybe 2 stars. I really didn't like it. And then I talked to my friend about it, and they actually gave it 5 stars, and so they didn't watch it in a smuggy, holier than thou theater room. I think they just like watched it alone in the privacy of their home. That's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make is this is a movie that I'm willing to revisit. This is a movie that I want to rewatch without like the smugness, without that kind of vibe in the room. I haven't gotten around to it just because I've been lazy, but because I'm considering it, because I haven't totally brushed off Eddington, it is going to be in C for actually can be bothered and can consider to rewatch. I'm gonna put it at the end of C though, because I haven't rewatched it yet. This is kind of like a placeholder C. Frankenstein is going right to S tier. Frankenstein is a movie that I have wanted for my entire life. I think I have wanted it for as long as Guillermo del Toro wanted it. And so like the fact that he finally did it, the fact that we're finally here, the fact that we're like in the room together, we made it, guys. We freaking made it. Die My Love, on the other hand, is gonna be in B tier. And I say that because I think Jennifer Lawrence's performance in this is A tier, but I think the rest of the movie is fine. And I feel like if she wasn't in the movie, it would have been a B, maybe C tier movie. Like she really carried it. And I see her, and I love her, and I appreciate her. Last Breath is going to be C tier. It's what I can only describe as a dad movie in the way that it's about a group of men who are like going against nature. Basically, it's like these people who are like divers who like do like the wiring in the ocean, and this one guy gets knocked out and he only has like a little bit of oxygen left in his tank, and I think he actually is like considered dead for about 7 minutes, and then he is revived. And that's like wild, you know, like the tension was there. I think that the wildest part about this movie is that it's based on a true event, and so like whoa, but also like this just feels like something that like my uncle would put on and then fall asleep to. Like this is like the ultimate dad movie as far as I'm concerned. Weapons, on the other hand, is gonna be in A tier. I actually feel like Avatar should be above Mickey 17, and I think Weapons should be before Mickey 17, and so Mickey 17 is just going to go all the way at the end. But Weapons was really fun. It's the perfect blend of like campy, hilarious, horror, disgusting stuff. The last scene of this movie is absolutely buck wild. It like completely changes the tone. Like it goes from like so horrifying to like so funny so quick. And that's kind of the vibe for a lot of the movie. Like again, it just like switches up on a dime of like being horrific and then being like so bizarre that it's kind of funny again. And then it goes back to being so horrifying. I also really love how this movie is set up. It's kind of like in chapters where we're following different people's like point of views. The more people we follow, the more we see like an overlap between their perspectives, and I thought that was a really interesting way to like tell a story generally, but also tell a story about a small town, just because especially in a small town, like there are so many overlaps. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone has a piece of the story, but no one has the full story. And I think that was a really clever way of showing the full story. Jane Austen Wrecked My Life is gonna go in D tier, or rather, I mean, like, I truly can't remember this movie, but I feel less towards it than it being just like a can't remember, can't be bothered. Like, nothing about this movie was memorable, so I think it has to be in D tier. One Battle After Another is going to go into B tier, and it's gonna go right in front of Wallace and Gromit, and that's because I think this movie was really well done. I think this movie had a lot of tension, had a lot of action, but like not action in a boring way. Like there are some action movies that like there's so much action that you just kind of feel overwhelmed and overstimulated and you stop caring. I think this movie was very well paced, especially considering it was 3 hours long. I thought the conflict and the politics and the unveiling of different politics and different groups of people and different factions was really interesting. I loved the last scene of like the car going on the hills, which I say loved and I actually mean I hated, because it did make me slightly nauseous. And so while it was overall a really good movie, it's not a movie that I see myself returning to, just because it was so stressful. And so B tier. Universal Language is going into D tier. I can't tell you what this movie was about. I know that visually it had like a Wes Anderson quality to it, but I don't remember it landing for me. It like felt like a bad Wes Anderson. Nickel Boys is going to be B tier. I feel like it is going to win a lot of awards if it hasn't already. I remember liking the book, I remember liking the movie, but this is another movie that made me slightly nauseous, and that's because of the technical aspect of it, the way that it's filmed. The camera is the point of view of one of the characters, and that is a deliberate choice because of like the circumstances of the movie and of the book and of the identities of these two boys. But in doing that, it was just like a little jerky and a little like motion sicknessy to me. So it's not a movie that I would particularly ever pick up again, and I'm actually gonna put it in the first of C tier because I feel like the motion sickness of it all like outweighs everything else about this movie for me, unfortunately. It's kind of like similar to my experience with I Saw the TV Glow last year. Like I liked the themes, I liked the characters, but the sound design was so much that I like hated the experience of watching it. On Becoming a Guinea Fowl is gonna go in A tier or beginning of B tier. We're gonna put her in B tier for now. What I like about this movie is that it's not like a horror movie, but the circumstances in this movie are so horrific that like the director uses some horror tactics to like make their point, and I like that. So basically, for context, this movie follows a young woman who finds her uncle dead in the middle of the street and is now kind of like having to go through the motions of the funeral rites and preparing and mourning. However, she finds herself really struggling with mourning the death of her uncle because he sexually abused her as a child. And she finds out that she wasn't the only victim in the family, and in fact there were several victims, and in fact his wife, who's only like 17, hello, was one of the victims, clearly. So like the way that this information is unveiled is done in a very horrific way. There's like not jump scares, but like jump scare adjacent things happening, and I think it was a really interesting way to unveil this horrific information that we are being privy to. So love that. Hate the content matter, loved how it was depicted. Question mark. The Conjuring is going in A tier. I'm so sorry. Like if this shows that I have bad taste, I actually don't even fucking care. I love the Conjuring franchise. And of the Conjuring franchise, number 2 and now number 4 are my favorite. And that's because my favorite Conjuring movies are less about the demonic possession and more about the relationship between Ed and Lorraine. I think their love is so beautiful. Or slight correction. I think the love of movie universe, Ed and Lorraine are so beautiful. I hear that he cheated on her like several times in real life, but like these two, these are my Ed and Lorraine. I love their love and I love their family and I love their whole relationship. And so the second movie is my favorite because it really delves into their relationship. And then this movie is my second favorite because it not only delves into their relationship with one another, but also their relationship with their daughter. And there's a lot of conjecture, there's a lot of made up stuff happening in this movie. Like not any of it is accurate in terms of like their family dynamic. I don't think their daughter was ever psychic themselves, but it makes for a good story and I enjoyed it a lot. The Summer Book is a perfectly sweet movie. I'm going to put it right before Last Breath. It is a movie based off of a story of the person who made Moomin, and it very much has like a Moomin Studio Ghibli kind of vibe to it. We're following a young girl who is staying at like a summer house with her father and her grandmother, and she's just kind of hanging with her grandmother the whole time. And like grandma is a little old, is a little sick, and so I believe grandma dies at the end of summer. I actually can't be too sure because this movie was so relaxing and so sweet that I did fall asleep for a little bit. I attended this screening for this movie as part of like my local theater's like preview club, and so like can you blame me? It's after work, it's later in the day, maybe I had a long day, like I don't know my life, but I did fall asleep for like a good 15 minutes and it was just like a really nice nap. And so, you know, if you ever really want to take a really nice peaceful nap, The Summer Book is kind of the movie for you. I do know that Companion is going into S tier. Is it like objectively not incredible as a movie? Sure, but it's everything that I want in a movie, and I loved everything about it. The costumes, the twists, the turns, the Iris by Goo Goo Dolls, like everything about it was just like so perfectly horrific and funny to me. It's a movie that I've rewatched maybe 2 or 3 times this past year already, and it still hits. It's still fun. It's still something I enjoy, so it's gonna stay up there. 28 Years Later, however, is gonna go in B tier, and it's gonna go all the way in the front because when I first saw this movie, I was unsure about it. It felt very rushed. It felt like there was like deliberate chapters in each movie. It's like very segmented in that way. And I remember when I first watched it, I didn't love that aspect of it, which is kind of ironic because I did like that about Weapons. But with Weapons, everything was blending in together and it made a full story. And this one, it felt very much like foundational pieces. And then I found out that they're making a trilogy of this new 28 years like saga, and so this movie made sense to me then because it's like, oh yeah, we're setting up the pieces for all of these subsequent movies. That's great. Okay, now we're on the same page. But despite the segmented nature of this movie, what I liked about it was its depictions of grief and its depictions of like moving on and moving forward. You know, like it is the end of the world as we know it. We could sit here and be sad, or we could recreate the society. We could try again. We could honor those that have left us, and we could continue to build a life without them. There's something very lovely and very like tender about this movie, which is really funny considering it is about zombies. Presence is a really neat movie where the point of view is the ghost haunting a house. And so in a lot of ways, it's very similar to Nickel Boys, at least on a technical level. But the reason why Presence is better for me is because as the ghost, it's like a static cam. And that like made my life easier. It like did not give me a headache. I also really liked this movie's idea of like what a haunting is and who can haunt what, and like how kind of like time works here. Next we have The Monkey, which was not a good movie. Yeah, I really don't have anything to say about it. We're just gonna put it right there because it looks good next to Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, but it just was fine. It was definitely not a movie that needed to be a full movie, and that's all I'll say about it. And now we're gonna move on. The Materialists, I'm gonna put in B tier. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in B tier. If you had asked me about it when I first watched it, it would have been in A tier, perhaps even S tier. Now looking back, it kind of is fine. I liked the themes and the ideas that this movie is exploring. I don't love the acting in this movie. I don't love how like soft-spoken and like kind of like asleep everyone sounds in this movie. And I remember that being like an issue that I had even while I was watching it. Everyone kind of just like feels like they just woke up from a nap. And I think part of it is to like depict the dreaminess of like the perfect relationship. But it was just kind of like, guys, did we have our coffee this morning? What goes on? So I think B tier is like really generous of me. The Bad Guys 2 is going straight to A tier. Not necessarily because I love this movie, but mostly because I bonded with my nephew watching this movie. Like, we became tight. We became besties. And so this movie has a lot of emotional significance to me, but I could not tell you what this movie's about. This is me just being goofy and silly. I don't care. Opus was not a good movie, and I think it's gonna go right there. I mean, it's like a cult movie, you know, it hit all the notes it needed to hit, but it didn't really provide anything new to us, the audience, and or to its genre. It was just kind of like, yeah, this is it. Sorry Baby is S tier. Sorry Baby is hands down one of my favorite movies of this year, perhaps even of all time. I think it is so beautifully written. I think it is so funny and sad and heartbreaking and so real. I unfortunately only saw this movie at home, and I regret that choice so much because my local theater was showing it. I did have the chance to see it in theater, and I completely missed my shot because this is the perfect movie to see in theater and then to like cry in your car for 15 minutes, and I like completely goofed it. Did I still cry after watching this movie? 100%, but like I could have been crying in my car. Think about that. Grand Tour is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. By far, hands down, one of the worst movies I've seen this year. And part of the reason is because it is 80% B-roll footage, 80% narration of what is happening in the movie rather than just like showing us what's supposed to happen in the movie. There's like one scene in particular that like really still sticks out to me, where like a woman is like looking for her husband and she walks into a room, and then they tell her like, oh, you can find him down the hall. And so she walks down the hall, and as soon as she opens the door to the next room, it cuts to black, and then there's a narrator describing her conversation with the man in that room. And I was just like, why couldn't you just leave like the camera's rolling? Why couldn't we just see that? Why are you doing this to me? And apparently it's because of like COVID restrictions and issues with scheduling and issues with filming because of COVID. And like, I get that. That must have been hard, but this sucked. This was not the answer. Whereas on the other hand, in a similar fashion, I think The Seed of the Sacred Fig is actually a B tier movie. Let's put her here. And this movie had issues with like COVID restrictions and also issues with like political restrictions. Like, they had to film this movie in secret because like otherwise they could have been caught and jailed, and then they had to like secretly get this movie out of the country so that they could show it at festivals and things like that. And I think they handle that very well. It's a very like closed room drama. We're in like one apartment like 80% of the time, and when you needed to show things happening outside of the apartment, like the director used like real life protest footage that was posted online as part of the film. So it's like you're dealing with similar restrictions, if not harder restrictions, and you made it work. And you made it watchable, and you made it good. The Phoenician Scheme is going in A tier. This is the one movie that's going above Bad Guys 2, and that's because this was like my reintroduction to Wes Anderson, and this like clicked for me. I was like, oh, actually, I think I do enjoy his movies. I'm late to the party, but there's something here. I really liked how this movie like dealt with guilt and kind of like the afterlife and your relationship with your children, the expectations of that, and there's just like a weird family dynamic that I really liked. And I don't mean weird in like a bad way, just like in a tense, dysfunctional way. And so in a similar way, I'm gonna put Sentimental Value in A tier. And this is actually another movie that's surpassing The Bad Guys 2. Actually, we're gonna switch this. I only want one movie to surpass Bad Guys 2, and it's gonna be Sentimental Value. This is a movie that also follows a very dysfunctional family, and this is a movie that like really sat with me after I watched it. Like, I could not stop thinking about it because it's not only about this family, but it's about the generational trauma, and like that is depicted through like this family house that has been passed on through generations, and how this house is as much a living thing, as much as a family member in this family as like everyone else. And what I liked about this movie is that it didn't really have a resolution, because there are sometimes like issues in your family that cannot be addressed, or can be addressed but like won't be fixed. And so part of this movie is kind of like learning to accept the dysfunctionalness of your family. And I think this movie did a good job of depicting that kind of thing, that kind of like soreness that can exist in a family. Death of a Unicorn, however, is another can't be bothered, can't remember. Like, I don't remember it being bad, but I also can't remember anything about it. Novocaine can also just be kind of thrown in here. Like, I straight up don't care. What I liked about Novocaine is that like its use of stunts and practical effects and all of that jazz. What I hated about Novocaine was all of its practical effects and all of its stunts and all that jazz, because it follows a man who like doesn't have any nerve endings. He doesn't feel pain, and then like the girl he likes gets kidnapped, and so he has to like fight a bunch of people to go and rescue her. He gets stabbed, he gets shot at, he gets like hit by cars, he gets like rolled around in glass, and there's like glass sticking out of his body, and there's just like blood and guts everywhere. And so it was like really impressive to watch, but also like really hard to watch. And I was like, well, I'm never gonna see this guy again. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is gonna go into B tier. This, I feel like, these three movies actually, I feel like have something of a conversation with one another, where it's about like women who are having to overcome these really overwhelming, really distressing, really horrifying obstacles in their life. And each of the actors in this movie do such a really good job of like making you, the viewer, feel as stressed and as upset and as overwhelmed as them. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is one of the more suffocating movies I've ever watched, and it like really stressed me out. Like, it was so effective, and in that way I never want to watch it again. So I'm gonna actually put it in A tier. Bring Her Back. Like, I truly wish that I could tell you what this movie's about. I remember being really excited about it because it was done by the same people who did Talk to Me, which was one of my favorite movies of whenever that movie came out. And I feel like this movie had really similar impressive special effects, or rather practical effects, because they're practical effects guys. But I do remember the story being like a touch lackluster, a touch like second project, you know, if that makes sense. Like, especially when your debut is like so impactful and so like groundbreaking, I feel like it's hard to like reach that again. Like, people's expectations are so high, myself included, that like whatever they released after the fact would have been like Rebuilding, however, is going to be B tier, but all the way at the beginning. I thought it was really sweet. I thought it was really heartfelt. I really love movies about community and the importance of community and working together and helping each other out and like being in relationship with your neighbors, and this movie gave me all of that. And also Josh O'Connor's in it, and he's one of my favorite actors. So The Wrong Paris was silly, goofy, bad. And so I'll put it in C tier. I think I enjoyed it. Did I enjoy it more than my nap during Summer Book? No, Summer Book was good. Yeah, I'll just throw it in there. It's like, it's a rom-com, it's silly, it's goofy, it's Netflix, it's not amazing. Heart Eyes was also not amazing. I just liked it a lot. It was like neither part scary or funny, which is wild because it's supposed to be a horror comedy. Drop is another movie I don't particularly remember at all. But I do think I liked it like just as much as Novocaine, so that feels good. Blue Moon was perfectly okay. I feel like Ethan Hawke is gonna get a lot of recognition for this, as he should, because he's incredibly talented, but it also felt very much like the Ethan Hawke show. Everyone else was just a background character as far as I'm concerned. Like, it was truly just like him monologuing for like 90 minutes, to the point where like as I was watching it I was like, okay, when is something gonna happen? When is the drama gonna happen? When is there a conflict? And I just felt like I kept waiting, and then the movie ended and I was like, oh, that's it. This was also part of my theater's preview club, and it is the movie that made me decide to take a break from preview club, because I just like was not vibing with any of this person's picks this year. I just like was disappointed time and time again. I'm gonna put it, actually, like, how much do I love Ethan Hawke in comparison to the rest of this movie? Yeah, I'll put it right here. I guess I don't love him that much. The Mastermind is another movie that was perfectly fine. It follows a man who like robs a local museum, and yet he's so self-centered, he's so in his head that he like keeps overlooking really minor details and keeps like fucking up. And he is smart, he is something of a mastermind, but he's again so self-absorbed that like he misses things. And so like that's a really interesting study of like a self-absorbed man. But do I really want to watch a movie about a self-absorbed man again? No, not really. I feel like this is tied with Blue Moon in a lot of ways. Like we're following a very similar archetype. We're following a very similar man, both of which kind of stink. One of them days was really funny and I really liked it a lot, and so I'm gonna put it in B tier. Magic Farm was a very like weirdo humor kind of movie, very like early 2000s YouTube video kind of humor. So it's not a movie that works for a lot of people, and it's a movie that like barely worked for me. So I'm gonna put it above Death of a Unicorn, and that's basically all it's gonna get from me. Marty Supreme is Oscar baity to its core. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I can appreciate a lot of what this movie is. Timothy Chalamet is without a doubt a talented actor, but this movie felt so chaotic. And I know the Marty Supreme stans are gonna come into the comments and they're gonna be like, well, it's supposed to be chaotic, it's supposed to be anxious manking, it's supposed to be blah 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 blah. And like, I hear you, I see you, I recognize that, and I don't think that it was done well. Like it felt so jump cutty. Like I understand that this is kind of like the MO for this director, to make these like really rushed, urgent feeling movies, but like there's no reason for it. I don't know. I just like was not emotionally invested in this movie at all. And so like the payoff at the end meant nothing to me, because I was just like, who the fuck cares? Like actually, who cares? So I can understand that it's gonna get a lot of praise and probably a lot of awards, and I know that Timothy Chalamet has been doing his Oscar campaign even before this movie came out. Like watching this movie was like, oh, he's been working on this promo for like 6 months prior. Like he's been doing the work this whole time, and I can appreciate that, but I just don't think it really landed for me. Together was a movie that I liked initially when I first watched it, and then the more I thought about it, the more like it didn't work for me. Again, I'm a sucker for good practical effects, but I don't really buy the relationship between these two characters, which is really funny because like they're married in real life and I think they have great chemistry in real life. But like the fact that the ending of this movie is about them staying together, when like throughout the movie you could tell that they have both outgrown this relationship in different ways, and I was really hoping for them to just like separate, was like, I don't know. It just like felt like the moral of the story was like to settle and to stay together with someone who clearly doesn't work for you, and like that didn't work for me. Twinless, however, was one of my biggest surprises of this year, and I think I'm gonna put it in A tier. I don't want to say anything about what this movie's about. I went into it without any sense of anything, and the reveals, the twists, the turns. This is not a thriller. This is not a horror, but there are some reveals in this movie that feel particularly horrific. And then at the end, like knowing that these two people are perfect for each other, like in their own like kind of fucked up ways, like really worked for me. Eleanor the Great was like kind of mildly disappointing. And so it's just gonna go straight to C. Like I don't really have anything to say about it. East of Wall is also gonna be a C movie, and I think I'm gonna put it, yeah, right here. This feels good. It's not like a super strong plot line. It's not a super strong cast. It's not a super strong a lot of things. But what I really liked about this movie is that like a lot of the actors are actually like non-actors. This was their first time acting, and in some ways it's obvious, in some ways it's a little clunky. In other ways, it's like kind of emotionally raw in a way that like really worked for me. I don't know. You have to watch it to see what I mean. And maybe you'll disagree, and I don't care. Five Nights at Freddy's is a C tier movie. I think it's gonna go... No, it's not. It's not gonna go before East of Wall. That'd be crazy. It's gonna go here. I do think it's becoming a little like convoluted and confusing. However, I do know that's like the nature of this video game's lore. So like, it's at least accurate to the video game. I do fear that it's gonna lose me in the last movie, but I also fear that I will be watching the last movie. I think I actually have to put it down here. Well, it's not a good movie, objectively. I can admit that. Friendship is an interesting movie because it's another movie that balances like comedy and thriller really well. Like, it's about a man who really wants to have a friendship with his neighbor. He goes through a lot of like weird antics. He has a lot of weird little quirks to try and like make that happen, and in some ways it's very funny, and in some other ways he gets so obsessive that it's like low-key a thriller. And so I like movies that have this weird balance between genres, and so I think C tier is fine. It was definitely an interesting experience. Eternity is going into S tier. Eternity is one of the movies of all time for me. I think I have to move these around. So I think I liked it more than Wake Up Dead Man, but I definitely feel equal about it with Sorry Baby. But Eternity was so freaking good, and like just visually so beautiful and so stunning. Like, we need to have color in our movies. I'm so tired of this like muted color palette. Like, this was so vibrant and so beautiful, and I just loved every second of it. Lurker, I want to put it like here-ish. Maybe I did like Lurker quite a bit. It's another kind of like thrillery social media commentary kind of vibe. I actually think these two movies are like in a really good conversation with one another, so we're just gonna leave it there. Dracula is also going to be in C tier. I think visually it was a really stunning movie, but I also fear like I don't really care about Dracula. And I've said this before on this channel, like, I like vampires. I think they're really interesting as a creature, as a concept, as a theme, but like Dracula's story in particular is like slightly boring to me. I said it, I don't care, this is my truth. And especially with like movie adaptations, like there's never any new material being presented. Like, what I liked about Nosferatu is that it was the story of Dracula, but like they added this like layer to the main girlie's character where she knew Dracula, she knew Nosferatu beforehand. She was being pursued by him, she was being groomed by him, you know, and there's like this whole other conversation happening in this movie. Whereas I feel like most Dracula adaptations, it's just like hitting the same notes. It has the pretty costumes, it has the cool set design, but it's like the same thing over and over again. And like, if we already made it once and it was good, why are we doing it 7 more times? Unless you're adding like something new to the story. But if it's the same old, why are we here? Splitsville was not good. I don't even remember anything about it. Yeah, that's fine. Sinners is going to be a tier movie. I'm going to put it before Begonia. I really loved Sinners. I love the world building. I love the character building. I love the character relationships. The only dig I have at Sinners isn't really a dig. It's just that I felt like there was so much information. There is so much lore. It felt too compacted into this movie. Like, we see those indigenous vampire hunters for like 2 seconds and then they dip and then we never hear about them again. And it's just like, I wish we could have spent more time with them. I wish we could have spent more time with all of these characters. It was a true ensemble cast, and yet the story mostly followed the twins played by Michael B. Jordan, which I think is fine because they were important to the story, but it's just like there was so much here that it felt like a slight disservice to only focus on the here. Oh Hi was also like mildly disappointing. I'm gonna put it before Hamnet because there were parts of it that I thought were funny, but it was very much a movie that like didn't know what to do with itself. Like, once Logan Lerman got tied to the bed and was like kept prisoner and we were kind of like in a misery kind of situation, it was very obvious that like no one knew how to end this movie. I feel like it could have had a lot of potential if it was a short movie or if it was like a comedy skit, but as a full-fledged 90-minute movie, felt a touch unnecessary, felt a touch dragged out, felt a touch like, what are we doing here? And then our last movie, 100 Nights of Hero, is a like fairy tale kind of situation. It's visually very fun. I love a fairy tale movie. I love really good costumes. I really love a lot of things, but it also felt like a touch predictable. So I think it's gonna be either the last of B tier or the first of C tier. And in that case, it doesn't actually matter where it goes. And so we're just gonna put it in the last of B tier. Duh. So that's it. That's the ranking. My throat kind of hurts. We've been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes. I actually think this is a really good indication of like my singular film ranking of these movies. And so I think I'm gonna update my letterbox list and then I'll publish it and then you can like see it in perpetuity. Or you could just watch this video like 7 more times if you're like really feeling generous with your time and energy. But that's it. There's nothing else to say here. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great day. I hope all of your projects are going well. I hope you watched a really good movie in the past week, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy 2026.